Picture this. A baby is born. It cannot walk. It cannot crawl. It cannot even hold on to its own mother. No grip. No strength. No way to survive a single hour alone. By every measurable standard, this is the most helpless newborn on Earth. Not a sea turtle hatchling. Not a baby deer. Up and running within minutes. A human infant. Now place that baby in the wild, thousands of years ago. No walls. No hospital. No formula. Just cold nights, hungry predators, and a small band of people who have to keep moving to survive. This should be impossible. A species whose weakest members require years of total dependence, carried, fed, protected, every single day. And yet, for 300,000 years, it worked. It worked so well. It built us. The answer was never a tool. It was never fire. It was something else entirely, and you have been living inside it your whole life. To understand the answer, we have to start with the most dangerous day of any ancient person's life. The day they were born. Human birth is unlike almost any other primates. A chimpanzee gives birth easily, often alone, and walks away within the hour. A human mother could labor for a day, sometimes two, in agony, often needing help just to survive it. Why? Because two forces inside her body were pulling in opposite directions. Her hips had narrowed for upright walking. Her baby's skull had grown enormous, built to hold a brain unlike any other animal's. Something had to give. For hundreds of thousands of years, birth killed mothers. It killed infants. Bioarchaeologists studying ancient skeletons estimate that a significant share of pregnancies ended in death for one or both. There was no safety net, no surgery, just other women holding on because giving birth alone, in the wild, was often a death sentence. So evolution found a workaround. Instead of waiting for the brain to fully develop before birth, the human body pushes the baby out early, dangerously early. A chimpanzee is born with nearly 40% of its adult brain size, already able to grip and cling. A human newborn arrives with only around a quarter to a third of that, and almost no motor control at all. Scientists call this secondary altriciality. The baby is, essentially, still finishing construction outside the womb. For decades, researchers blamed this entirely on narrow hips. But newer research points to something else: the mother's own metabolism. Growing a human fetus is so energetically expensive that, at some point, her body simply cannot sustain it any longer. Birth happens not just because there's no more room, but because there's no more fuel to give. A baby born unfinished. A baby that needs the outside world to keep building it. That unfinished baby was fragile in almost every way science can measure. Its brain alone burned through more than half of its energy budget, demanding constant feeding, day and night. Its body could not yet regulate its own temperature. No shivering reflex, almost no fat, and skin far too thin to hold in warmth. Left exposed on a cold night, a newborn could slide into hypothermia within hours, not days. Its immune system was newborn too. No memory of the world's diseases. Only a fading trickle of protection passed through its mother's milk. Modern medicine solves this with incubators and vaccines. Prehistoric humans had none of it. What they had instead was proximity. Constant skin, constant warmth, constant milk. A newborn's survival depended on never being left alone. Not for an hour, not for a night. And that constant need created a new kind of danger. One that had nothing to do with cold, hunger, or disease. Because in the wild, a helpless baby had one weapon left, the only way to signal hunger: cold or fear. Crying. And crying is loud. It cuts through darkness and carries across open ground, announcing exactly where you are. To a hyena, a leopard, or a pack of wolves moving through the night, that sound was not just noise. It was an invitation. A crying infant could put an entire camp at risk. every sleeping adult, and every other child exposed because one small voice wouldn't stop. Ancient caregivers faced a brutal, constant task: keep the baby quiet, keep the baby calm, without always knowing why it cried in the first place. There was no pacifier, no simple fix, just a person, awake, holding, rocking, feeding, doing whatever it took. And this relentless demand, night after night, turned out to need more than one exhausted parent could give alone. Because here is the arithmetic nobody talks about. A mother in the ancient world wasn't just caring for one impossible baby. She might have a newborn who needed constant milk, a toddler too slow to keep up, and an older child who still needed feeding and teaching. Producing breast milk alone burned hundreds of extra calories a day. Carrying an infant while walking added even more, slowing her down and leaving her hands too full to gather food or defend herself. No single forager, however strong, could produce enough calories to keep that whole family fed while also carrying a baby across open land every day. The math simply didn't work. If mothers had truly raised children alone, the species should have collapsed under its own biological cost. It didn't. Something, or someone, was closing that gap, starting with the women who had stopped having children of their own. In most animals, females can reproduce until close to the end of their lives. Humans are strange. Women often live decades past menopause, decades where they can no longer have children of their own. For a long time, evolutionary biologists saw this as a mystery, even a flaw. Why would natural selection let a body outlive its own fertility? One influential theory, developed by anthropologist Kristen through years of fieldwork with the Hadza people of Tanzania, offers an answer. Grandmothers. Women who survived past their childbearing years didn't stop contributing. They redirected everything toward their grandchildren. They dug for tubers, gathered fruit, and freed young mothers to have more children sooner, without starving the children they already had. Where grandmothers were present, children's survival odds rose sharply. Menopause, in this view, wasn't the end of a woman's biological usefulness. It was the beginning of a new one built entirely around keeping the next generation alive. But one grandmother was never going to be enough. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer, HRDY, studied this question across cultures and species, and found something remarkable. Humans are almost alone among apes in this way. A chimpanzee mother cares for her infant by herself. She doesn't share, doesn't hand her baby to others, doesn't trust the group. Humans are the opposite. In hunter-gatherer societies studied around the world, infants are held, fed, and comforted by many different people within their first months of life, sometimes 10, sometimes more. Fathers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated adults. Among the AKA people of Central Africa, fathers hold their infants for a remarkable part of the day. This is what researchers call cooperative breeding, and in the animal kingdom, it's rare. It means the phrase "it takes a village" isn't just a comforting saying. It is, literally, biology. Humans didn't evolve to raise children in isolation. We evolved to raise them together. With the village in place, the next problem was food. A newborn survives on milk alone, packed with antibodies that shield it from disease before its own immune system can. Bioarchaeologists can actually measure this in ancient bones and teeth. Chemical signatures in an infant's dentin, built up layer by layer, like tree rings, show scientists almost exactly when breast milk stopped being the only food, and when solid food began. But solid food posed its own problem. A toddler's gut couldn't handle tough meat or raw grain. So caregivers, usually mothers, chewed food first, breaking it down, softening it, before passing it mouth to mouth into the infants. It sounds strange to modern ears. It was, for hundreds of thousands of years, entirely ordinary. Some researchers suspect this practice, repeated across countless generations, may be where one of humanity's most universal gestures of affection first began. Not proven, but a compelling thread. Feeding solved one crisis. Movement created another. Hunter-gatherers didn't stay in one place. They walked, often for miles, almost every day. And a baby that cannot cling has to be carried entirely by someone else's body. Carrying an infant in your arms while walking increases the energy you burn by up to a quarter, and it leaves your hands too full to gather food, use a tool, or run. So humans invented one of their first technologies long before axes, long before spears, slings, wraps, simple hide carriers that held a baby against an adult's chest or back, freeing the hands and distributing the weight. Almost none of this survives. Leather and fiber rot away within years. But indirect evidence remains. At a 10,000-year-old burial in Italy, dozens of tiny shell beads were found arranged in a pattern consistent with stitching onto a wrap that once held an infant close. And carrying did something else. It calmed the crying almost instantly. Warmth was the next battle, and it never ended. Fires were tended not just for cooking, but to hold infants inside a bubble of survivable heat through freezing nights. Archaeologists studying ancient living floors in Central Europe find infant remains clustered close around old hearths, near enough for warmth, far enough to avoid the sparks. And it wasn't just fire. At Border Cave in South Africa, researchers uncovered grass bedding nearly 200,000 years old, laid over beds of ash and mixed with aromatic leaves known to repel insects. This wasn't accidental. It was engineering: clean, insulated, parasite-resistant sleeping spaces built to protect the group's most vulnerable members. Across many ancient burial sites, infants are also found coated in red ochre, a mineral powder that acted as an antiseptic and a barrier against moisture and infection. None of this was luck. It was knowledge, tested and passed down through generations, to keep a fragile body alive through the night. How much did all this effort actually matter to the people doing it? Look at how they buried their dead, and the answer becomes impossible to miss. In Austria, 28,000 years ago, newborn twins were laid together beneath a mammoth's shoulder blade, wrapped in red ochre, dressed in dozens of carved ivory beads. In Kenya, a toddler barely 3 years old was wrapped tightly in a shroud, its head resting on a pillow, and lowered into a pit inside the cave the group called home, the oldest deliberate burial ever found in Africa. In Alaska, infants were laid to rest alongside carefully made hunting tools, as if equipping them for a journey. These were not quick, careless burials. They took time. They took skill. They took grief. Long before anyone had a theory of childhood, prehistoric people were already showing, through their actions, that even the smallest, most fragile member of the group was fully one of their own. All of this, the carrying, the feeding, the fire, the burials, the sheer amount of adult attention poured into every child, came at an enormous cost. And that cost bought something extraordinary. Human children don't just take longer to grow up than other animals. They take dramatically longer. A chimpanzee is largely independent within a few years. A human child remains dependent, learning, and carried for well over a decade. That extended, expensive childhood is not a flaw in the system. Many scientists believe it is the entire point of the system. A brain as complex as ours cannot finish building itself before birth. It needs years of safety and support to keep developing afterward. Cooperative care is what paid for that extra time. Grandmothers, fathers, siblings, and friends subsidize human childhood, freeing up the years a growing brain needed to wire itself. We are not intelligent despite needing so much help. We are intelligent because we got it, which makes the way most of us live today a strange kind of experiment. For nearly all of human history, no parent raised a child by themselves. There was always a circle: grandmothers, aunts, cousins, neighbors, a community sharing the exhausting, expensive work of keeping a small person alive. Today, in much of the modern world, that circle has disappeared. Families move away from relatives for work. Communities scatter. Many parents find themselves alone in an apartment at 2 in the morning, holding a crying baby, with no one to hand it to, no one to trade shifts with, no one within reach. It's not that modern parents are failing. It's that they're attempting something the human body and brain were never designed to do solo. The exhaustion so many parents describe today isn't a personal weakness. It's a biological mismatch, a species built for cooperative care, now often left to do the work of a village alone. Here's the thing they never tell you. When you were born, unable to hold on, unable to survive a night alone, you didn't make it because of a tool or one heroic parent working alone. You made it because a circle of people chose to carry you. Grandmothers who lived long past their fertility, fathers, siblings, and strangers who held you when your mother couldn't. For 300,000 years, that circle is the only reason any of us are here. We didn't become the smartest species on Earth because we got smarter first. We got smarter because someone else was always there. So if you're raising a child alone, or you were raised that way, or you simply feel alone, that isn't the natural state of our species. It's the one thing your ancestors never had to face. The village was never just a saying. It was survival, and somewhere inside you, it's still waiting. Thanks for watching.